He's an English actor playing a black pimp. You know, it's just
what movie is that?
True Romance, because Quentin wrote it, but he didn't
wrote
direct
it to sell it so he could make Pulp Fiction.
Reservoir Dogs.
Reservoir Dogs, yeah.
Sorry.
And then he got like 30,000, and he was going to use that, but he got some other a friend of his helped him. Said, wait, maybe I can get some producers, and they got like $1 million producer, which actually backed out, but they found another guy for $2 million.
Is his old producer Scott Bender? Is that right?
I don't remember the names. I'm bad with names.
He broke up with him somewhere around Hateful Eight or.
Really?
Yeah.
So it was a guy that he had been with for that long, because there was a guy that he loved to death. And that must have been him then.
Definitely wasn't Harvey Weinstein. Welcome to Movie Baiters. Yeah, this is the show we started.
Oh, we started already?
When you heard me snap the can, that's how we start. Totally. No, I enjoy telling people what the show is, who are on it. The Movie Baiters with the Farx brothers. I'm Kyle.
I'm Kirk.
And this week, or this series of episodes, we have Paul Economon. What of your credits do you like to lead with?
My personal credits?
In terms of, like, are you an actor or a producer? I know you're an executive producer, so I want to be cognizant. Some people like to be a producer first, and then
mostly I'm an actor. That's what I like to stick with. I prefer that. I've done actual producing work on things, and I hate it. It's just too frenetic and running around and trying to get everybody to do what I want them to do, which I'm not. I don't know, but I think I'm just too nice of a person to tell people what to do. I don't want to do it.
It definitely helps to be a jerk, right, brother?
Right.
Yeah, I think so.
What's my first credit? Like, what do I lead with?
Producer?
Yeah.
I always got it wrong. I always said assistant director.
Oh, thank you for not saying assistant director. That's my below the line first credit.
Wow.
You gotta play both sides of the field. So, Paul, I am excited about. You have a over 30-year career, right?
God, yes, I do.
Has the number gone up? Numbers can only go up in this context
you figured
until
out,
they don't.
I started in, I believe it was 1993.
Okay. So 32 years.
There you go.
It depends on when you started in 1993.
Well, and do you want that story at all? That's kind of an interesting little.
I know it was after college for you because you didn't act in high school. It was not considered couth to do so.
Unfortunately, in my high school, no, it was not. I wish I would have, because I missed a lot of cool stuff, man. And so I carried that on through college. I didn't act in college. I took one acting credit.
Sure.
Where it was an elective. I was in the College of Liberal Arts. And they had us read a bunch of different plays, Picnic and the such, which kind of leads me to my story of getting into acting. I'm a counselor, social worker. That's what I did for 20 years. And so I talk to kids, basically, with adolescents.
Mm-hmm. Kids with adolescents?
Kids with adolescents. Kids that are adolescents. Adolescent kids. Yeah. Well, you could say kids. If I say kids, you might think like they're 5 or 6 or 7 years old. Adolescents. I still call them kids.
Are they teens in this
teens,
context?
They are teens. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
12 to 18.
Got it.
Sometimes they were 11, sometimes they were 19, but generally speaking, they were.
Got it.
And I thought, well, geez, I'm talking to these guys all the time. I'm counseling with them. I'm doing role playing with them. We do all kinds of things. At some point, I said I should be an actor. To this day, I can't remember why I thought I could do that, because I had no experience, right? Except for I was always kind of the clown. I'm the baby of the family, so I always was like the cut up, and I was always making voices and making people laugh and whatnot. And I always used to say that I wasn't an actor. I'm an entertainer. Anyway, so my sister was a photographer. She worked for the Walker. She still works for the Walker. She's still a photographer. And she took, I somehow knew that I needed to get a headshot. And I took I had her take these headshots of me. And then I proceeded to make up a resume. With all the little plays that I had read, I said I did, and I brought it to the agents. And I'd buy them coffee and flowers and tell them how wonderful they were.
Yeah, butter them up.
And you booked your first commercial, the Easy Egg, or no? That's not right.
Edible egg.
Incredible edible
I say
egg.
that, but it wasn't. I had some smaller probably a little more extra parts before that.
This is why we're real journalists, brother. It's because we get the truth out of people.
Yeah.
I did a lot of industrial films before that as well. You know, because here's the thing. Back then, there was a union, an agency called NUTS, Non-Union Talent, and they've recently closed. But back then, Jan Hilton was the owner of Non-Union Talent Services, and so she was tough, and she'd tell you, you know.
In what sense was she tough?
She's no bones about it. I mean, if you couldn't act, she'd say you couldn't act. You know what I mean? She told me, she said, well, Paul, this is what you got to do. You got to do theater. You got to do a show at Theater in the Round, and you got to take an on-camera class through Lynn Blumenthal, and then I will represent you. And I'm like, you know, I'm doing whatever she says. You know, I don't know. Well, okay. So I took Lynn's class, and I auditioned for. I started doing theater. My first show was at the Como Park Players, and I had the smallest part in the show. I was the delivery man for this show, and I was off stage. I had one line that said "delivery man," and I was so terrified. I mean, literally, I would sit there and wait, watch until my line came up, right? And then, of course, we'd do setups, you know, we'd wait in the bombs, and I'd put up chairs and stuff like that, which I had a little cheat sheet for that as well. I mean, it was just, I was so worried that I'd screw up. Anyways, by the end of that was in the spring. By the winter, I was the lead in that theater company. Mm-hmm. And so then I had met Jan, and then she had told me what I had needed to do. And so I went and I auditioned for a show at Theater in the Round, thinking whatever, and I got a part. You know, everybody at the Theater in the Round was, you know, like theater majors, and they were like, "What are you doing here? You don't have any experience," you know. And so it was kind of a battle with some. Back then, there was like a theater mafia, they called them.
Oh, I'm sure there still is.
There probably still is, but not quite like there used to be. And I won't mention any names, but these people were like very theatrical. They would not do on camera. They refused to do on camera because on camera was not theater.
I see. And that was actually an option back in the 80s and 90s because there was more being shot here then, right?
My point is why wouldn't you? You know what I mean?
Money, yeah.
Because I didn't have a theater background, so when you think about it, that's more traditional. You know, I suppose their idea was to go out to New York. I always wanted to go to California. I like the sun. I don't like the cold. You know, but their idea was to go to New York and do Broadway, off-Broadway, blah, 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 blah. You know, which is great. And you know, if I would have known back then, maybe I would have gone that route, but I had no clue, you know, because I had no history. So I got a show there, and then long story short, Jan started to rep me. I started doing stuff. One of my biggest auditions was for the Incredible Edible Egg, and I think that was with More Creative at the time, and I booked it. So, literally out the gate, within a year and a half, 2 years, I already had one of my SAG. You needed 3 SAGs credits before you had to join.
Okay.
And the rest, I just kept booking stuff. It was just, it was so much fun. It's just amazing. And doing shows and then meeting people, and it was like the best thing that I ever, hobby that I ever picked up.
Hobby? But it's a profession for you.
Well, it's a profession now, yes. But back then, I was still working at the hospital. And so I would take...
in counseling?
Yeah, doing therapy with the kids.
Okay.
And so I was full-time, and I would do my auditions on my lunch break. I'd take my lunch break and then drive downtown Minneapolis. I worked at United in St. Paul.
Okay.
They were pretty liberal about that. I had like an hour and 15 minutes. They didn't want me to be too late.
Sure.
But and then if I booked something, I had this very liberal personal time, and I would just take time off and I'd shoot.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you mentioned being the youngest of how many?
My family, I have 2 older sisters.
2 older sisters, youngest male
But
child.
the boy, they're 2 girls.
Yeah,
Yes, 2
okay.
females. Yes.
They say about the youngest that they usually have the look at me disease because,
Yeah.
I've never heard of that before.
You never heard of the look at me disease?
No, the look at me disease?
It's a desire to be noticed.
Oh, wow.
Kirk and I have a large family. We're, brothers, obviously. But where do you number among our siblings?
Not Meadow. I want to say 5.
5 out of 8?
Yeah, 5
well,
out of
9
8.
with me.
Yeah.
10 from before. Now we're down to 9. We'll get back up to 10. In
right.
the Farx brothers family.
Yes, that's a lot of... Yeah, so you got, the last one, the baby, Probably. I mean, he had to scream or she had to scream pretty loud to get anybody's attention.
Is that the case with our youngest? I don't know them as well because of how big our family
Well, it's
is.
not always that way.
Yeah.
I mean, but they do say if you're the youngest, then marry somebody that's the oldest. Don't marry a younger person.
Wow, I never heard that either.
Because you're too.
What?
Yeah, that's well. If you an analysis, I mean, if you want to marry someone that's older because they're more the adult and you're more the child, and you'll get along better. But if you're both the child, then you're both going to be fighting for attention.
Mrs. Farx and I are both the oldest.
That can work though, because
Yeah.
you're both adults.
You're the exception.
Well, you're a
more
counselor,
mature.
so you would know.
And the middle child can go either way as well.
Yes, Marsha, Jane said. What? You've never seen the
No.
Brady Bunch?
No.
Oh my gosh, I just caught something on how she was so as started at 14. She was a younger child, and she needed so much attention, and she started to abuse drugs, and then she started to. I'm not going to go into that.
Oh yeah, I was thinking about this at the gym, or no, when I was walking today. I was like, oh yeah, because Mr. Brady was not into Mrs. Brady's, and then I couldn't remember which of the three the kids, and it was the middle one who played. Because Cindy was the youngest. This is your interview section, but I want Kirk to know how well I know the Brady
the
Bunch.
Brady's. A show I've never
She
seen.
dated Greg real life.
Oh,
Off camera.
all right.
And then she would go to parties and she'd want to get attention from professional, famous directors.
Sure.
Maybe that was Harvey Weinstein. Was he around then? I don't know. But they
maybe.
would take advantage of her, which was just, horrible.
Yikes.
And she was a huge coke addict.
Uh-huh.
And that was her downfall. She would do anything for the,
Yeah.
That time in the 70s and 80s when, why were things so wild? Most of it's probably because a big pile of cocaine was on the
Right.
table with,
Yeah.
A lot more cocaine back then.
I'm not.
What brought you into counseling? That's what I'm curious about. You go to college and then you're like, okay, I'm going to become a counselor. What, you go to college for counseling?
I always was a person that people came to and talked to. So even without even wanting to get a degree in psychology, people would just come to me. If there was a crazy person in the room, like at a party, they would come to me. Even if it wasn't a party, no matter where I was. If I was at the airport, sitting alone, a crazy person would come to me. They would just gravitate to me. And I would end up sitting there talking to them for like an hour, right? Mm-hmm. And this my entire life, even when I was a child. So when I started college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, like most people, and I had many majors. I had art was one of them, and Latin American culture, which was my minor, turned out to be my minor. And I got a job as a campus mailman, which was like one of the best jobs you could have at a college, especially a university the size of the U of M, because we would drive around and deliver mail to all the different dorms and offices, and everybody
you
knew
they
us.
had the lay of the land doing
yes,
this?
and we
Okay.
had these Ram trucks that we would drive, and we'd get to talk and flirt, and it was just a great job. So after about 4 or 5 years of college, I got a letter saying they were demanding that I graduate
Okay.
because I already
They're gonna kick you out.
had we needed like 100 credits to graduate. I don't remember what it was, but I had like 160.
What?
I know. I mean, like I had way too many credits at that time.
Oh my gosh.
I know, right?
Could have gotten 2 degrees.
So I chose a major. I'm like, okay, I got enough credits now. All I need to do is pick up a few more electives for the psych major, more focused areas, the social sciences, etc., and then graduate. And I did. So that's how and then I applied for different jobs within that field and worked at a couple places and ended up at United Hospital in the adolescent psych department. Which is like the last bastion for kids that are suicidal or depressed, or
no.
schizophrenic, or late breaking developing schizophrenia, etc. They come. There's nowhere else to go. Once you're there, that's where you are.
You don't graduate out of there into...
You hopefully graduate out of there, and then we have you have the after programs, but there's nowhere else to go. I mean, other than the street.
Yeah. What changed with kids over 20 years?
What's changed with kids is the policies. It's now a revolving door. They don't have the same kind of therapy, hands-on kind of stuff that we did what we did then, they don't do that anymore. It's more pharmaceutical. It's assembly line. They want to get them in, but the problem is it's a revolving door because they keep coming back, and they come back worse, or they come back dead, or they, you know what I mean? It's not like because we did all the therapy back then. It was like a little community. We did the schooling and the art and the the one-on-one therapy, the group therapies, and the religion, whatever it was. And we would get to know the kids, and they would be there for like a couple months. These kids would come out of there with a bill like $200,000-$300,000. It was huge. It was expensive.
Did insurance pay for that?
Insurance paid for that, of course.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. They weren't all rich kids.
No. And they were all different economic levels.
Yeah.
You couldn't kick somebody out, and then the hospital wanted to, it's all about money. So they changed their policies, and they called it patient-focused care. We called it patient care.
Yes.
Can you swear on this show?
It's
please do.
explicit, yeah.
We called it patient fucked up care. So it really was, and they wanted things to be more in a box. The time, the therapeutic time for these children was cut in half. It was just, there was more suicides, more attempted suicides. There was more. It was really it wasn't good.
I had to look up for a movie in Zfest the year before the one I watched of you in Mercenary Kingdom, of all what do you call it? All cause mortality for people under 18. The only thing that has increased in the past couple of decades is suicide. It's the only thing that has gone up. And because when I'm making a movie, I need to be convinced that if I've never experienced suicide personally, thank God.
You never felt depression to the point of suicide, or you've never known anyone that's committed suicide or attempted suicide.
Actually, I told this story on the podcast a couple of months ago. My wife and kids were in the car, and we saw someone standing up on top of the science museum downtown St. Paul, on the parking garage, and we're like, my wife's like, why are all the cops in the? Oh my God!
No way, it was a jumper.
Well, I have no idea, and I looked the next day to see if there was a report,
so
and
it
I didn't find it, so maybe they didn't.
Probably,
but my wife's concern was, and you'll find out why I'm laughing, was that our kids would see, and I thought she was upset because she'd taken it on the wrong turn. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. But
by the time I had graduated high school, because I went to South High School, which is in South Minneapolis, okay. I knew. I think it's 4 people that had committed suicide.
Damn,
God.
And 2 people that were murdered. One was kind of questionable. He either got pushed or he jumped off the train bridge over by the Lake Street Bridge.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And how big was your graduating class?
Like 145, 200, maybe, something like that. It wasn't much.
The small place in...
It was a big school, but we had a small class, yeah.
Wow. And it got smaller, apparently.
Yeah.
Nice, Kyle.
What? That's
a joke. Yeah.
That's not a joke. It's a factual statement, brother.
It did.
Yeah. How did 20 years of working with kids in a critical situation have an effect on you?
Well, at first it was really difficult. I thought, man, I didn't know if I was going to make it. I mean,
it's a lot to deal with.
4 or 5 months in, I thought I was abused because my dad used to yell at me to clean up the garage or to do whatever, shovel the snow. I didn't know, I had no clue because I really didn't. I mean, I don't want to say I was innocent, but I was very naive. I had no idea what people were going through. I worked with a kid who was adopted into a family, a Mormon family, not saying anything against Mormons, but it was a Mormon family. And the Latter-day Saints, Yahoo. And they lived on a hobby farm, and they would go out, and when they left, they would shackle the kids to the furnace so they wouldn't go out of the house. They were doing it for the welfare money, right? And so at one point, they were gone so long that a goat had walked into the house, and apparently it was a sick goat because it died. So this goat died on the living room floor. This kid is shackled to the furnace. He sees this. He's got nothing to do, and he's got nothing to eat but popcorn. For some reason, they left him popcorn. He would stick popcorn in the goat's butt and jump on its stomach and pop it out. And this is a story that he was telling me, that this is what he did for entertainment.
Yeah.
This kid was going to be a murderer. I mean, he had attempted murder. He was on a hold. They couldn't put him in prison.
Too young.
Anyway, so it's that kind of stuff sometimes.
Damn.
Pretty intense.
That it's, you are your brother's keeper. It takes a community. It takes it starts with the parents. It really does.
Sure.
If you had, if anywhere along that path, his linear path, as someone had shown him love, and so he had known what love was, he could have been a whole different person.
My wife actually works in counseling for the school system, and one of the things that was kind of eye-opening to me when I first started dating her was finding out that at one point Minneapolis had 2 schools for mothers, like high school students that were, and she works in international counseling, so it's like, well, yeah, I had this 15-year-old in my office today, and she was pregnant. I said, excuse me, you've just described a crime to me. And it's like, yeah, that we have 2 schools for that. We're down to 1 school in Minneapolis for that. So I don't know if that's an improvement or not. I don't believe it was due to budget. I have no idea, but there's at least 1 school in Minneapolis for just that. And honestly, I'd rather live in, I'm glad my property taxes go to something like that versus them not being in school and then that child being cared for while they're in school so that someone can get an education.
Exactly.
Because,
Exactly.
So, I've gotten used to hearing stories like that, and it's just me hearing the story, not me doing anything or administering the care like you were. What motivated you to get out of that and then pursue acting full time?
Well, like I said, I had been doing that for years, and I thought I should, I just needed an outlet for, probably for all the things that I was being subjected to, and that's how acting came in, and I just loved it. And I stayed with it. It was part-time, like I said, I always had my day job. I mean, I had opportunities to go and do things and do places, but I never took that leap until later on. I probably should have, I could have, who knows? I don't know. I mean, I used to live in LA. So when I lived in LA, it's very indicative of a ship arriving every day with new passengers. And that's how I looked at it. It's like every day a new bus would arrive with more actors, more
dreamers,
people that wanted to be, a star.
Right.
And every day another bus left and went back home. And if, as you probably know, people that have done that, I'm one of them as well. Unfortunately, I mean, I had gotten my SAG card and I had moved to LA, and of course, SAG went on strike. So
when was this?
This is 1999 to 2000.
Oh, that strike. Okay, yeah.
And so I was like, what am I going to do? I literally can't do anything because they're on strike. Though, interestingly enough, even though AFTRA was a sister union, they were still doing work, which doesn't make any sense to me to this day. Because I did some AFTRA things. I did a show called City Guys, which was an AFTRA show.
But they've merged with SAG.
Now they've merged, yes.
Yeah, okay.
But they were still sister unions. Unions are supposed to stand up for each other. I have a friend of mine who could totally dissect and tell you all the downfalls of unionism, though I think there's a lot of good things about it as well. But the SAG doesn't necessarily stick up for the people that it should if it really wants to have a union that is together.
Sure, but 80% of the people don't make the...
Exactly.
Yeah.
I did for like 2 years, I made health insurance.
The health insurance,
that was.
Are you still in the union?
I'm still in the union, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Because you can't leave. Is that how that works?
Well, you can. I mean, there's other things around it. I mean, here in Minnesota, there's a lot of people that do financial core, which is, what financial core is?
No, I know.
Core, which is you send SAG a letter saying, hey, I work in a state that really doesn't have any union work, so I want to do non-union so I can make some money.
Sure.
And then they send you a letter back saying, well, if you do that, then you can't vote, and we're not going to send you any of our free DVDs. And you send them a letter back saying, I don't care.
Oh, so that's what it is for the actor? Because I know you can do the short film release for SAG. Have you done that before?
Oh yeah, you can, as long as SAG is aware of it and they're on board.
Okay.
Yeah, but you can't do something that isn't. You know what I mean?
Like a commercial for Best Buy, or
you couldn't unless it was SAG.
Oh, they'd have to hire SAG actors to do
yes, they would.
Best...
You are, or you'd have to be FICOR. If you're financial core, then you can do it
Okay.
as a SAG actor. You'd still be SAG because you're still paying your dues. No, they take their money. They take your money. They're not going to give up that. That's for
Yeah.
sure. So
Well, when you make the insurance, maybe.
well, if you wouldn't do that, then you would yeah.
What were you doing in the years you made the?
Well, I did a great spot for Toro, which paid me about $15,000 a year for like
wow.
3 years.
Jeez.
I did a commercial for Ciatis. I did lottery spots. I did back then. Best Buy was union. I do a Best Buy. I was in one. I was not the lead, but one of the co-leads. And then I would also do one every month. We'd shoot overnight, and it paid like $1,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh God, there was tons of work, even in the 2000s.
Before the big movies, like when they were still
Well, the
making
big
Joe
movies
Somebody.
started to end after '99. After Jesse Ventura got into office.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, because he changed the legislature, and that's really what screwed it up. And I don't understand why they just don't go back to that template. Because if you go back to that template, you could bring everything back. I mean, because you'd have the tax rebate and the money and for some reason the legislation today doesn't understand the desirability and what jobs are brought here by having a Hollywood film. I mean, it's not just that us actors get work, even though we probably don't get the leads because they're cast out in LA, and a lot of the crew. Maybe is brought in, but they still use a lot of crew here, and they still use a lot of day players, and they're staying at hotels, and they're eating at restaurants, and they're doing the catering is here, and I mean, there's just a ton of actual finance that's coming in.
What are you working on right now?
Well, I'm working on a Zfest film.
You're working on a short.
It's a short 7-minute film. I think we got so much good stuff in there. It should be 12 minutes. I wish they would have had the limit to something like 10 or something. It's a comedy, and there's some great jokes that got cut.
So you've seen an edit of it?
Yeah, I've seen the final cut, mostly. There's just a few things that we got to touch up. Jared Crooks, he's awesome director and DP and editor. He's doing some touch-ups on it. But what's the question?
The question is, what is it about?
Okay.
Pretend somebody who's never heard of Zfest, you're telling them, I made this 7-minute movie. Anything.
So Zfest is kind of a Minnesota-born film festival. Adam Colt.
Good friend of mine.
Yeah, he's a great dude. Known him for years. He started it.
With the folks over at Z Systems.
Yes, and then he eventually got
Louis Anderson,
Louis Anderson involved,
up?
And that's when it really took off.
Oh, okay.
Because I think because it had more credibility, because then it was Louis. You could, if you win, you're gonna go to LA, and you're gonna be in a little show with Louis. It's like,
I didn't know that.
That's
cool.
way more than $100 or. Of course, 48 Hour is, you're going to go around the world, but I don't know if anybody's ever really made it from Minnesota. I mean, some people have won, but not the big prize. I don't know.
Well, like Andrew Hunt won the big prize, I think, in 2019.
Did he win the big prize?
He won the big prize for Frostbite and then went on to make the Infernal Machine after that.
I worked with Andy when he was just starting out.
Okay.
I did his first 48.
His first 48?
Yeah.
Back in the mid-2000s?
Yep.
That's when they first started it?
Yep.
Okay.
We were like the first crew to do 48s.
What was that like?
Oh, it was a blast.
Uh-huh.
Oh, it was so much fun. It was crazy because nobody had, the idea that you had to go pick out a genre out of the hat and then write this script and then shoot it in 48 hours. It was insane. But, Andy was fantastic. He was in a team, Andy Hunt and Jason Lashy, Sleepy Eye Films.
Okay.
And they were a team, and they did it together. And I did like 3 or 4 of them with them, and they were just wonderful films.
I think I've heard that back then it was there was more buy-in from the city. Like R.T. Ryback was at like a party for 48 one year or something. Is that the time we're talking about?
That's the time, and it was sometimes it was very. it became so like, are you kidding me? You got backers from these individuals that were putting in thousands and thousands of dollars to make these films, and you'd be like, well, how are we supposed to compete with that,
There's movies that they spend hundreds of millions of dollars on that don't make as much as movies that there's $1 million spent on.
Well, what I'm saying is it's a 48-hour film. It's supposed to be local, what do you call that kind of seat of your pants kind of shooting. And we were all struggling for a budget, and we're struggling for a crew, and struggling for actors, and then then Target would back somebody.
Oh, sure.
You know what I mean? And so that would be your competition. Well, they got the $10 million camera, they got the sound guy, they got the studio, and well, how are you going to compete with that back then?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and it's still, I guess, the case now. In some cases, like there are kids who get involved with Zfest, and there are people who are professionals on a regular basis who do Zfest, and I would rather fight the best opponent than an opponent that's considered my size, shall we say.
And I think the playing field has leveled out now because equipment is much more
democratized.
Yeah, it's better. It's so more advanced, and you can do so much more with so much less. It's a whole different game. I mean, like in the '90s when I started, and everything was shot in 35. You know what I mean?
Oh, sure.
It's like people, when I say, I'll joke on set sometimes, they shut the gate, and people are looking at me like, what? Because that was one of the things they said is you had to shut the gate, because if you didn't, you'd expose the film, or, that's on the 35, on the camera. So today, your phone you probably could shoot a beautiful thing on your phone and edit on your phone and do the sound on your phone. And
no, you definitely need sound equipment.
No.
Let's be honest.
But I'm just saying.
Kirk would argue that as a sound guy.
Yes,
Sorry,
thanks. Yeah.
You were in Out of Time, right? With
yes.
Yes. And that's this will probably come out after this has been in that festival, but I'm planning to see it next week.
Yes. Have you not seen it yet?
I'm sorry, I haven't seen
it's
it.
Okay. It's okay.
Wasn't it just at Twin Cities Film Fest recently? Is that where it premiered?
And then we won Best Film at the Minnesota Black Film Festival.
Okay.
Best Feature.
Fantastic! Congratulations. The festival, it's a micro festival for Black History Month or something like that? Black History Month,
yeah. So they're showing films, and ours is one of them, and but it's backed by the Twin City Film Festival, which that's because Bill Cooper he started it.
It's Jayden now.
It's Jayden now, yeah. So anyways, I've been friends with Bill for decades. So
cool. Very cool. What is it about? I don't like.
So that film,
don't tell me too much about it because I'm going to see it next week.
We have to ask for the log line.
No, I
it's
know.
always the log line.
Do you know the log line of it?
No.
Okay. See, I didn't want to put him at it.
It's. I mean, I can tell you in a nutshell. It's a film about being pushed down and kicked out and fighting for the right, for what is right.
Okay. Yeah. And you're above the title, I think, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so and it's Charlotte Marie, it's Lori, previous guest of the podcast.
So Charlotte Marie, me, and then Lori.
Oh, okay. Are you guys a couple or something?
No.
Oh, okay. What can you tell me anything about your character? Again, I'm gonna see it next week, so.
Okay, I'm the boss.
Okay.
Do you want me?
Are you the bad guy?
Yeah.
Is that? Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that's okay. You're the bad guy in Mercenary Kingdom. You're one of the bad. Isn't Lori a bad guy too?
Lori's a bad.
She mentions
woman.
she was a bad guy, so I actually kind of look forward to seeing Lori as a bad guy. Yeah. Not because I don't like Lori, but because of how you started out talking about how nice you were. Lori's also very nice. So when I see nice people,
it was hard. Let me tell you, it was hard to do to be this character sometimes. Okay. And I mean, it was for me anyway. And I would rehearse with Charlotte Marie. I mean, we did a ton of rehearsing, and because we're like the leads in the thing, and so we had a lot of scenes together. But it was difficult to be that person.
Okay. Yeah. What's something you learned from Allison, the writer-director? Is that correct? Mm-hmm. What's something you learned from her on this project? To
be patient and to trust and what you feel initially. She would always. Not always, but she would generally appreciate my first take. And sometimes I would think, well, that's just too much. And she'd say, no, you're on. As an actor, you're always trying to, you want to do your best, you know. And no matter what situation you're in, you always kind of question the second after you've done it. Oh, wait a minute, if I just would have maybe, sometimes, you know. I'm mostly a commercial actor, so I mean, I've done tons of commercials. And auditions, generally speaking, are cold. You know, you don't, I mean, today you have to do
Self-tape.
a self-tape, and you send it in, and then you get to do the audition. But back in the day, what you would do is you maybe get some copy, maybe you wouldn't. You get an idea of what it is, and you'd show up and you'd read this copy.
Right.
Just, you know, this is the first time you read it, and then you'd leave. I mean, it would be literally that quick. And you'd say, dang, if I just would have done it this way, is always how you felt. And then when you got cast, you'd always be like, man, was there nobody better than me? You know, that's how sometimes I would feel.
Having sat on the other side of the table and feeling it's very inefficient, and I do not like some people enjoy it, I'm aware of this, and they should do it. I very much hate being on the other side of the table and watching someone.
Oh, you do?
Well, yeah, because first and foremost, only a third of it is what you're saying. 2/3 of it is like, well, what is your body language?
Yes,
your natural
yes.
body. How did you walk into the room?
Yeah.
Because you're going to carry that with you every day. And then, like, what do you look like? And it's rarely you so much as what is the other, like, matrix of people that we're looking at.
Exactly. If you have a wife, then do you guys match? I mean, is there a little chemistry there? I mean, there was many a times that I had wives and I auditioned and I got the wife that I auditioned with because we had a chemistry. And then there were times when I felt, oh my God, they're going to see right through that because there was nothing, you know. I mean, you just get a feeling. I mean, as an actor, you have to immediately adapt and say, this is my wife. Oh, I love you, you know, and then you're just right there. You don't really, of course, but you just go to that imaginary place. And if she goes there, or he, or whatever, then it works. And they're looking for that age, and they're looking for that hair color, then you got the part, you know.
What's something you're going to walk out of this interview wishing you'd said? Because we're reaching the end of this segment, so I wanted to ask a question that would really put you on edge. Like, what am I going to wish I had said?
It's probably going to be things I wish I hadn't said.
You can always ask Kirk to edit them out.
Yeah, I usually edit out anything that.
But I don't know. I'm a very verbose person.
Okay.
So I tend to speak too much.
The thing I was interested, because I did listen to your interview with Nick Pilatachuk on the St. Paul Filmcast, and would like to recommend people go listen to that from, I think you did it about 3.5 years ago, because it was 2021.
COVID, yeah.
Yes. Hey, we're still in COVID, maybe. I don't know. Maybe some time traveler from the future is going to come and tell us it's not over yet.
Yeah, COVID part 2.
COVID part 2.
Electric
Boogaloo.
Boogaloo. Yeah.
Boogaloo.
There you go.
The one that's and watch when we release this will be when. So the question we ask people at the end of every interview segment now is, who else should we have on the podcast that you've worked with, or Upper Midwest filmmakers, because this is an Upper Midwest disagreement show about movies and movie related topics.
Well, there are numerous people. Oh my goodness! I mean, where could I even start? Have you thought about going towards the casting side of the
anyone? Sure.
Yeah.
I
name a name. We're gonna send them this and say, hey, Paul said we should have you on this, because that's what I did with Allison.
Well, I think Tony Trizzoni.
Tony Trizzoni, okay.
Who runs A&E Casting.
Oh, okay.
She's a casting director.
Great.
She could give you the lowdown on casting and, I mean, on this business, because, she's been doing that side of the camera. And she's an actor as well. So I would, she's got my vote.
Tony Trizzoni.
Yeah.
I love alliterative names.
Yeah.
Well, okay, Paul, I'm going to thank you, because this part's going to come out last after we have the conversation the debate we're about to have.
Okay.
Just so you know, thanks for being on the show. Any final words?
You guys are great, man. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I know that, what's her name? The lady who created Grey's Anatomy says when you get a compliment, you should just thank people, or say thank you and move on.